The guns used in the 2020 police raid at Breonna Taylor's South Louisville apartment. The actual blinds from a neighbor's apartment as well, with bullet holes in them. Physical evidence presented today to the jury in downtown Louisville in Brett Hankison's federal retrial. He's accused of violating the civil rights of both Taylor and her neighbors when he fired 10 shots into the side of her apartment. WHS 11's Isaiah Kim Martinez and senior photojournalist Alyssa Newton are covering the trial at 6th and Broadway. And Isaiah, late today, the jury heard from another person at that apartment complex that night.
Yeah, Doug, it was actually a neighbor of Breonna Taylor's who lived just a floor above her, directly above her. It's the first time we've heard from this witness. She actually pounded the witness stand, describing the moments when police knocked on that door. She says to this day it is still debilitating for her, some of the trauma there, and it's just part of some gut-wrenching testimony we heard today, including, again for the third trial in a row, a photo presented showing Breonna Taylor lying on her apartment floor after the shooting. We've seen the images of the bullet holes littering the inside of Breonna Taylor's apartment, including on the plastic blinds covering that sliding glass door. Now, for the first time in front of a jury, federal prosecutors bringing in one of the blinds from her neighbor's apartment, also with a bullet hole. I talked about this with attorney Nick Mudd of Mudd Legal Group for perspective. He's not involved in the trial.
I'm sure they did it for dramatic effect, but they also probably did it to show the seriousness of the case and the actual remnants of what was hit by a bullet, to give the jury some sort of more of a real feel of what happened that night.
Also played in the courtroom for the jury to hear this harrowing 911 call from Taylor's boyfriend at the time of the shooting, Kenny Walker.
Somebody kicked in the door inside my girlfriend.
Walker heard crying over the call.
Oh my God.
He fired the first shot at police when they entered her apartment, saying he thought they were intruders. It's just some of the evidence presented on day 2 of Brett Hankison's federal retrial. The former LMPD detective seemed more talkative than past days with his attorneys walking into court. Inside, we heard from LMPD Sergeant Jason Vance, the on-scene investigator who interviewed Hankison days after that deadly raid. Vance testified he could not understand Hankison's firing into the side of Taylor's apartment, saying, quote, "If you can't isolate your target, you cannot shoot." Prosecutors continue to hammer this point, that Hankison admitted not being able to see a person when shooting through the covered blinds of Taylor's sliding glass door and windows. But Hankison has told investigators he was trying to protect fellow officers who came under fire at Taylor's doorway. Defense attorneys argue this case isn't about details discovered after the fact, but about what the officer perceived at that time.
The prosecution wants to argue, look, what would a reasonable officer do under these circumstances? The defense is going to counter that and say, you don't know what it's like. You were in a situation with gunfire and a police officer getting shot.
Well, Isaiah, former and current Metro police officers there testifying against Brett Hankison. After 2 days of this, what's the overall message that they're trying to drive home? What are you picking up there in the courtroom?
Doug, ultimately, folks like former Detective Miles Cosgrove are trying to paint this picture that Brett Hankison, without any question, violated policy. And in his case, he even testified that he put him in danger, describing bullets flying above his head in that apartment. Bottom line here, though, Doug, for defense attorneys, they say this is not about the facts discovered after this happened. It's did the officer perceive that he was in danger and his officers were in danger, and he acted upon that. What does that mean for him? The jury will ultimately have to prove that with beyond a reasonable doubt, he put other folks in danger. Doug.
All right, Isaiah, thank you. The case unfolds again tomorrow.